Okay. Do I have permission to record this interview?
Yes,
Okay. What is your full name?
Geraldine Moore,
How old are you?
56.
When and where were you born?
I was born in Sumter County, Georgia, May 21, 1964.
And what did your immediate family consist of?
My immediate family consisted of my mother, 4 siblings, and then an extended family, which includes my grandmother and my grandfather.
Okay. And what were your parents' names?
My parents were named Emma and James Hicks.
And can you tell me a little bit about them?
Well,
Like
let me
how did
start with my father. My father, I didn't live with my father. I didn't grow up in the house with my father. I always had a relationship with him. It was a distant relationship because he lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm 2.5 hours away. So I would see him at times when he would come home because he was from Sumter County, Georgia. And we laughed a lot when we were together. Uh, like I said, I didn't spend a whole lot of time with him, so that's pretty much that with him. My mother, on the other hand, I lived with. I had a wonderful relationship with my mom. Although when I was a teenager, I thought she was mean because she didn't let me do some of the things I wanted to do. When I grew up, I appreciated that she didn't let me do some of the things I wanted to do. But she was a wonderful person. She taught me a lot. She taught me integrity, hard work, taught me about love, taught me how to appreciate things, she taught me about appreciating people and just how to be grateful for things that people do for you and how to be somewhat of a, I guess the word I would like to use is a missionary and do things for other people and help other people.
Gotcha. Do you know how they met?
No, I don't.
What about what type of work they did?
My mom was a CNA for 30 plus years at the same facility, and she did that for until she was retired. And then my father worked at a paper mill,
Okay,
and he
and
worked there for several years. I think it was like 30 plus.
gotcha. What are your siblings' names? You said you have four.
Well, actually, I have 6, but I grew up in the house with 4.
Okay. Can you name them?
Yes, I have 2 that are deceased.
Mhm.
So you want me to name them too?
Mhm.
Okay. Uh, so Shirlene Hicks, Edward Hicks, Norman Hicks, Darwin Hicks, Annie Kitchens, and Janice Kitchens.
And what ones are deceased?
Norman Hicks, Edward Hicks.
And how old were they when they passed? And when did they pass?
Um, December 2008, and Norman was, I think, 46,
Mhm.
and then July 2015, I think it was 57.
Gotcha. Were there any are there any traditional first names in your family or any traditional names?
Yes, well, on my dad's side, the name Edward, Eddie, a very popular name. I
Mhm.
had an uncle Eddie. I had a cousin that was named Ed,
Mhm.
and my grandfather and great grandfather were named Ed, and then I had a brother named Edward. So in the family of Ed, it was a very popular name. And my grandmother's name was Nettie, and I have a cousin that's named Nettie.
Mhm.
So that's pretty much it for traditional names.
Okay. All right, now we're gonna talk about your neighborhood. Did you have any other family members that lived nearby growing up?
Yes, I had cousins, and
Hmm.
for a period of time, we lived in the house with my grandparents, so that was nice because I had cousins that lived in the house also.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
So you got to see them pretty often then,
yes,
right?
I got to see them real regular.
Okay. What did your community look like outside of your family as a child? Like, um, did you have school friends? Well, what schools you went to, what churches, or anything in the community that you did outside of spending time with your family?
Well, church was a big part of growing up. It was everybody in my neighborhood went to church.
Mhm.
Not just in my household, but in the neighborhood. Everybody was in church on Sundays. Uh, a lot of times we had other activities through the week, maybe Bible study or whatever, but we usually did church on Sundays and gatherings, family gatherings every Sunday. Everybody would like come to my grandmother's house, and then my grandmother passed away. Everybody would come to my mom's house, just to do family meals and gatherings. Everybody liked to eat. That was the thing we did when we sat around on Sundays and the kids played. So you got to play with your cousins. And sometimes I would go to my other grandfather's house, and we would just all gather as a family there. A
Mhm.
lot of times that was on Sundays. And other households pretty much was the same way. So we played with our neighbors a lot of times. And when I was a younger, my granddaddy and some of his friends had like a baseball team. So they would gather in the front. In the front there was like a field out in the front of our house, and they played baseball.
Mhm.
So some of the adults were playing ball, and then the ladies they would sit around and talk, and the kids would be out in the yard playing. And I look forward to those Sundays when they were going to have a game because that was just so much fun. You had company, you had
Mhm.
kids to play with,
Right.
so that was nice. And I've always been around a lot of family.
Gotcha. So you mentioned baseball, and what other type of games did you guys play out in the yard, or what toys were popular for you guys then?
The only toys that I remember as toys that came from a store were bicycles. All
Mm.
the other toys that we played with, we made, and
Mm.
there were some toys that some of the names I can't remember, but back in the late '60s, early '70s, my grandma used to buy syrup and it came in a can. And
Mhm.
so we would make toys out of those cans once they got empty.
Mhm.
We would make toys out of old bicycle wheels, just whatever we could find to play with because we didn't have a lot of money. So we made toys and we didn't even know anything about, like store bought toys because we never went in a store and picked out toys the way kids do now. So
Right.
we made toys and we were happy. And I do remember having a very happy childhood because I felt love. And we didn't know what we were missing because we just never saw the other side of having a lot of material things. We
Right.
wore hand-me-down clothes whenever we got a chance to, get something new. My mama would make it, and we'd be excited about that. Every now and then, mom would come home with something new, but it was very seldom. Most of our stuff was made because she did a lot of sewing.
Okay. Okay. I had a question that I was gonna ask because you said something about well, oh, you explained how you make the toys. Do you guys have any games that were popular?
We played hopscotch. We played hide and seek. We played Red Rover.
Okay.
Um, we played Simon Says. Those were kind of games we played
Oh,
when we
so
were
games that
outside.
are still popular today that kids still play today.
You know,
Okay, if so right now just thinking of back to those times when you would play with your cousins, can you name like five cousins that you knew you would see every Sunday?
um,
Or five friends from the neighborhood that you knew you would get with on Sunday and play these games or watch the baseball games?
it wasn't necessarily consistently the same, except
Mhm.
for when I went to my other grandfather's house, and those cousins will always be there.
Mhm.
Do I need to name some?
Yeah, if you just name, I would say
So
name the ones that are closest
Laverne
to
was
you.
one,
Mhm.
and Lois was one, and Kenneth was one. Dwayne.
Mhm.
So those were cousins that every single time I went to my other grandfather's house, that would be there.
Okay, okay. And speaking of grandparents, let's talk a little bit about your grandparents. We can speak from either side of the family, your mom or dad, which whichever ones you have a relationship or history with. Do you know where your grandparents, your ancestors came from?
I don't know where either one of my grandparents were born.
Mhm.
But they were both from my knowledge of them, they were both here in Sumter County.
Okay.
Um, both I had a relationship with my mom's mom because I saw her more, and because at some point we lived with her. But I also had a relationship with my dad's mom. But I was in the second grade when she died, so I didn't get a. I mean, I was like in the second grade when she
Right.
died.
Okay, so you were young.
But I do remember her, and I remember going to her house sometimes, and I just remember her personality, and I remember that she was very strict.
Mhm.
I remember that if you were at her house, you had to behave, and if you didn't, you were going to either be punished or get scolded. My other grandmama, who was my mom's mom, pretty much the same thing, except we knew, and I knew that my grandparents loved me, and that was one thing that I really cherished above all things because I never wondered if my grandparents loved me. I always felt like they did, and no matter what, whether I was so sad or whatever, I always knew that they loved me because my mom's mom, she would feed me. I remember her always kissing me on my forehead, and I just
Mhm.
remember like things that we would laugh about. There were things we, just laugh about stuff. Sometimes funny stuff on TV and TV shows that she liked to look at because you were gonna look at what she wanted to look at.
Mhm.
And we watched stuff. Sometimes after we didn't live with her anymore, sometimes I would go over and spend the night, like on the weekends, with her,
Mhm.
and just me without my siblings. And I remember enjoying that special time with her.
And this is your mom's mom, right? What's her name?
Nettie.
Nitty. Okay. And what about your mom's dad? What's his name?
My mom had a stepdad who I thought the sun rose his head on.
Mhm.
His name was Eddie James, and then her biological father was named Robert.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Are there any traditions that are still carried on today in your family that began when you were a child?
Not so much as far as the holiday gatherings, yeah, but the other things like the Sunday gatherings, everybody kind of goes. Everybody's got different work schedules. Everybody lives in different areas now. So the proximity that we were when I was a child, people like lived in a closer proximity to each other, and then like people didn't work on Sundays and just
Mhm.
kind of the way things are now. So no, I don't have a whole lot of tradition that celebrated back then. Things are a lot different
Okay. Let's talk about school. Can you describe what it was like going to school and growing up in like junior high? Well, K through 12 actually.
now. Okay, in elementary schools, I always a lot of fun parts of school was like riding the bus to get to school and riding the bus
Mhm.
home. So we lived in the country, so we always rode the bus, and we just always enjoyed, had fun on the bus. That was like my social life on the bus to
Mhm.
school and from school.
About how
At
long did
school,
it
I
take
did
you?
enjoy school because I was always like, I enjoyed school because it was important to me. I had to make a good grade. So I
Mhm.
always listened in school. I always did pretty good on tests because, just the fun part of learning. I mean, you knew you had to learn because my mama was not going to accept a bad grade. So you knew you had to get good grades. And I did talk a lot in school. So I know I used to get, when I would get my report card, the only thing I would have good grades, but then it would have, oh, she talks too much or next stop talking so much. And that was the only thing. And my mom was fuss at me about it. So, that was that was bad. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I just it was my social life. So that was all we basically got to do, other than like on Sundays we went, play with our cousins and all.
Right. You said
That's elementary school. Junior high school was a little more difficult for me. My grades were good, but then, as I grew up, people my age started to have more of a social life as far as
mm-hmm.
outside of school than I did, and I wasn't allowed to do some of the things that some of my friends were doing, so I felt like deprived. And high school was decent. Still, grades was still, I still always maintained a decent grade, sometimes B, but it would be a decent grade, but most of the A's are B's.
Mm-hmm. You talked about the bus ride. About how long did it take for you to get to school on the bus?
Well, because of the route, it wasn't because of the distance, it was because of the route. It probably was about 30, 40 minutes, maybe.
Oh wow, that's a long time
Yeah.
on the bus.
Yeah, but because we had a route to go
Mm-hmm.
all over town, and we lived in the country, so it was because of the route. Like I said, the distance. If we left my house and went straight to school, it wouldn't have
Right.
been so bad. But it was just because of the route that we had to take.
Okay, okay, okay. Did you have any influential teachers?
Um, I did. I had one particular teacher in high school. Um, she was pretty I guess. And then in the third grade, I remember in my third grade year, I had a teacher, Miss June Jennings, and I remember she used to read to us after
Mm-hmm.
school because we were bus riders, and the people who walked to school or the people who were car riders would be gone. So it was only a small amount of us that rode the bus, and we
Mm-hmm.
had to wait to be picked up. And I remember her in the evenings when everybody else was gone and just the bus riders was left. She would just, like it kind of felt more personal because it was just our little small group, and she would read us stories every day, and I really enjoyed that. And it just made me kind of use my imagination as she was reading the stories, and just gave me a sense of creativity. A lot of times when she read books to us, and
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed that. And she was a very nice teacher. And I guess in high school, I remember one particular teacher that was kind of, she was just such a nice person,
Mm-hmm.
and very nice, and she was just a very caring person.
What was the name of your high school?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What was the name of your high school?
Well, when I started high school in ninth grade, I went to school at Plains High.
Mm-hmm.
I went 1 year at Plains High, and then the next year I went to a school where it combined two separate schools, which it combined Plains High and
Mm-hmm.
Union High, because both schools were so dilapidated. It was just like they were pretty much falling down. So they
Mm-hmm.
both needed a school. But both needed schools.
Mm-hmm.
So they combined the schools. So my 10th grade year through my 12th grade year was at Sumter County High. It was
Okay.
a combination of Union High School and Plains High School.
So Sumter County High School was built when you were in the 10th grade.
Well, actually, it was a Sumter County High years before,
Uh-huh.
but just because they were combining two schools, and to give it a name, they called it Sumter County High. But there was another Sumter County High. The original Sumter County High was for people that had graduated like in the 70s, but
Mm-hmm.
that school no longer existed.
Okay. That's something I didn't know.
Yeah. So you'll hear people say that they graduated from Sumter County High, and they
Mm-hmm.
may be much older than me, but that's because they went to that Sumter County High.
Gotcha.
And then the year that I graduated was the last class at that Sumter County High. It was like a 3 year school until they got a new school built. So we had like a temporary school building.
Gotcha. Okay.
That was what Paul. And then the next year after I graduated, it was Sumter County Comprehensive High School, and that
Mm.
was everybody combined. That was a combination of the Union and Plains, and everybody combined to go to that school.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did you belong to any influential clubs and organizations, or did you hold any leadership roles?
Um, I was in the beta club. I was on
Mhm.
the debate team. Those were the two things. I didn't participate in any sport. I wasn't much on a sport. I wasn't much in the mindset of a sports person. I just kind of like you said, I was
You
a
wanted to
member
do
of
something where you
home
could talk.
economics. What do you call it? I was a member of the Beta Club, the debate team, and the FHA. That's it.
Okay, okay. Okay. How did gender roles affect you during your K through 12 or education?
Gender. I saw a lot of gender bias as
Mhm.
I grew up, which I didn't even realize until I got to high school that it was gender bias. And the one thing that made me realize in high school about gender bias is because I felt like boys had they got more opportunity to do some things that girls didn't. And that's when I started to. I didn't realize it was called gender bias. I just thought it's not fair. But
Mhm.
all through high school, I saw, I mean, not through high school, just through school in general. I saw this it was a difference in, what girls were encouraged to do as opposed to what boys were encouraged to do. And that was just all around in the community and school is just an all around thing. And I did tell you the FHA that I was involved in,
Mhm.
that was called the Future Homemakers of America. Well, now if you say homemaker, that would be offensive. And I understand why, because why would you encourage somebody to be a homemaker unless that's what they decided to do?
Mhm.
And to call something the future homemakers of America is somewhat offensive because even if you stay at home, if you're a stay at home parent, or if you just decide you're not going to work for whatever reason, you shouldn't necessarily be called a homemaker because I think homemaker is really something that should be obsolete because the care of the home should be not related to gender.
Right. Okay. All right. So we're going to jump back over to talking about family again. We just got out of it to talk a little bit about school and how it was growing up. So what holidays did your family celebrate growing up?
Well, we would was starting with the first of the year, January 1st. We
Mhm.
all had a tradition. We would have the collard greens. We would have black eyed peas, and they were supposed to symbolize, like the black eyed peas. We would always have that for a meal every year. On the first day of the year, we would have that, and
Mhm.
that was kind of like to symbolize the black eyed peas symbolize good luck. The
Mhm.
collard greens symbolize money and prosperity. And also, if you were, you couldn't do laundry on the first day of the year because that was considered that, oh, well, if you do laundry on the first day of the year, that's going to be all year long you're going to be doing laundry, which it
Mhm.
didn't make sense.
Right.
And it still don't make sense, but it was a tradition. That was what my grandparents, my mom, and generations back believed. So that was just a tradition that was still honored when I was
Mhm.
a child growing up. The next holiday we celebrated was Easter, and Easter was always fun. Easter was a
Mhm.
lot of fun because we were gonna have an Easter egg hunt, and we were gonna have all the kids, and we were gonna hide eggs, and it was gonna be a fun day to play outside, and you just had fun on Easter Sunday. The
Mhm.
next holiday we celebrated, my mom's birthday was in May, so that was considered a holiday. You always had a celebration when it was my mom's birthday, and my birthday was 2 days after hers. But when my mom had a birthday, she always celebrated her birthday. And Memorial Day, yeah, so maybe not. And
Mhm.
4th of July, every year on 4th of July, my mom would get us an outfit, and we would either go like to a motorcycle race, or we would do something, maybe go to family house or some barbecue. Come out of having a barbecue, but we always enjoyed 4th of July. And the
Mhm.
next holiday we really celebrated after that was Thanksgiving, and then it was Christmas, and it always involved, us sitting around having meals and visiting with family.
Okay. So I think I already know based on how you just explained them. But what was your favorite holiday and what was your favorite part of the holidays?
I always enjoyed Christmas and Easter.
Okay, and what was your favorite part of those holidays?
Well, visiting with family, having
Mhm.
cousins, and we would all be outside and just playing and having fun. Didn't have a care in the world. And Christmas was always nice because we got presents, but we would always have like family gatherings and everybody sitting around enjoying.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Now we're gonna talk about the house you grew up in. How was it furnished? Did you have your own room? And where did you spend most of your time in the house?
Uh, it was a, I'll say, I don't know the best word to describe the house. I grew up in two different houses. I don't know the best word to describe, but going with my grandparents' house when we
Mhm.
lived there,
Mhm.
um, we, me, all of us and my grandparents and all, we lived there. And actually, the house was very crowded, which I didn't know until I became an adult that it was a lot of people that lived in the house.
Mhm.
It was a modest house. At some point when I got older, we moved from there to another house. The house was not a well built house. It was an older house. It was nothing fancy about it, but there were rooms inside of that house that if you walked into those rooms without seeing the outside, you would be very surprised at how nice my mom had it decorated, and
Mhm.
it was not indicative of what it looked like on the outside. Uh, I never had my own room at that time as a child until I was in junior high school.
Okay.
And I slept with my sister. And most of the time I spent time either outside or in the living room.
Okay. And what were meal times like in your family?
My mom was an excellent cook. I always looked forward to meal times. And even when my sister was older and started to cook, I enjoyed meal times when she cooked too, but especially on days when my mom worked as a CNA and she would have off days through the week. So I always knew the days that she was off, it was going to be a really good meal when I came home from
Mhm.
school.
What type of foods did you eat?
Vegetables, especially during the summer, lots of vegetables, whatever vegetable that was, in any type of greens, corn, peas,
Mm.
just whatever type vegetables. My mom was good at making like she would either make the dessert, like maybe a sweet bread or some type of cobbler. She would
Mhm.
cook like that kind of food. It was just like I always enjoyed her when she would cook. So meal times were always good. And Friday nights at our house was always we would always have ice cream on Friday nights, and we would watch TV and have ice cream on Friday night.
Hmm. Who was responsible for cleaning up after the meals? Did you guys the responsibilities or?
We split the responsibilities, and we had to do it because we knew that if you know we that was it wasn't an arguing because we knew that wasn't allowed. It's like you do it because you know you got to do it, and that's that.
Right. Did you guys have any pets?
I remember having one pet
Mhm.
during the time when I grew up,
Mhm.
and that dog died, and it was a dog, and that dog died, and we never have another pet.
Gotcha. How did your family get around?
My mom had a car.
Okay. Was public transportation available?
No,
No? Okay.
we
Did
live far outside of the city limits, and even in the city limits, they didn't have public transportation in the town that I lived in, Plains, Georgia.
Gotcha.
Ooh, 39th president.
Did you get a car once you got to high school or middle
No,
school? I mean, not middle school,
no,
of course. Okay.
I did not.
When did you learn to drive?
After I graduated high school,
Who taught you?
a friend of mine,
Okay. Describe your first car.
the first car that I owned,
Mhm.
I was well into adulthood before I owned a car.
Mm-hmm.
It was a used car, and I didn't have any problems with it. It was just a used car. It was a used Honda.
Oh, a used Honda. I was gonna say what was the make and model. Okay. And who was your family doctor?
Um, Most of the time when we had health care, we went to the local health department. I remember going as a child. I remember Dr. Anderson having to go to a pediatrician called Dr. Anderson. We went to him sometimes, but it was rare that we went like if we had, I guess, something going on, like an issue or whatever. But for like immunizations and all, we went to the local health department.
Okay. Did your family have any home remedies that you use, instead of going to doctors all the time?
Yes, we did.
Can you give me an example of a few or one or two?
My grandma would give us like she would make it was something she made a tea out of, and I don't know exactly what she made the tea out of.
Mm-hmm.
But she would give it to us like during cold season when it was really bad, and it was supposed to protect us from having a cold. Um, we did have home remedies, but I cannot really think of any uh some kind of tea. I can't remember what it was made out of, but it was some type of tea. And so I put that out of my mind because the day was so nasty.
Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about college and your first job now. Can you tell me about your college years, what schools you attended, and how you decided to go there?
Well, I didn't attend a 4 year university. I attended a technical college,
Mm-hmm.
and I graduated from there. Let's see, I was in my 30s, so I was a late bloomer.
Mm-hmm.
Before I attended college, I worked several years at a factory.
Okay.
And then when that factory closed, I went to a technical school and I got a medical assistant degree.
What technical
And
school?
when I graduated from there, I ended up working at a local hospital here, which we only have one hospital here. And I've been there for 23 years, and my medical assistant degree actually afforded me the opportunity to work in many capacities. Like, for example, I worked as an OR stroke tech. I worked as a unit secretary. I worked as a telemetry tech. So I've worked in many capacities. I've worked in central sterilization, sterilizing instruments. So it's lots of things I've done since I've been at the hospital. But so that's where I am now, and I've been there for 23 years.
Gotcha. Okay.
Most people
So,
don't stay on jobs that long anymore.
right. I heard you mention you worked at a warehouse was it fresh out of high school?
Well, fresh out of high school, I worked at a factory.
Yeah, right, a factory. What
A
was a
factory.
typical work day like there? And
We worked 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. It was like a clothing manufacturer. We made shirts, and it was like a family type environment. Work was a lot of the people when I started working there. It was a local factory that so many people in town had worked at. There were way more women that worked at the factory. Again, with the gender bias because they were showing. There were a few guys, but they did like stuff like the cutting room stuff, but they never really did. They didn't do the sewing. But there were lots of people who came through that plant that worked there for a while until they went on to do other things. And I worked there for 13 years. But a typical day at work was like you go to work and me, I had an automated machine, so it wasn't like I sat there and coded. It was just like I just kind of operated a machine that did the work. And then we got off. We were working from 8 to 5 when I first started, and that was it.
Gotcha.
We did that for 5 days a week.
How much money did you earn? How much, like, what was the minimum wage back then, or how much did
I
you
don't
make on
remember
the
what the
job?
minimum wage was, but I think the most I remember making when I worked there was like $13.75.
Okay, okay, all right. What would you say your most memorable aspect of working in the hospital?
Oh, wow. The most memorable? You mean like one occasion or an overall?
Overall.
Okay. Well, just being able to help people,
Mhm.
not necessarily even just in the capacity as a patient. Sometimes it's family members, or being able to just assist people with whatever their needs. Or sometimes the smallest things was just has been so appreciated.
Mhm.
When I started working at the hospital, I worked on labor and delivery, and I used to call that the happy floor
Mhm.
because it was very seldom a sad moment on that floor. It was like babies were being born,
Right.
and I worked on more so with the moms than I did the babies. But I saw a lot of births when I used to be a OR stroke tech doing C-sections,
Mhm.
and just learning a lot. It was a lot to learn, about just the simplest things that people don't even think about when you're in an OR room, which is a whole other world when you're in an OR setting. But
Mhm.
also, the mom would be awake most of the time, so you got to see her when she saw her baby for the first time, or if she had a vaginal delivery, you got to see her when she saw her baby, and you knew grandparents would be there. They would be waiting to see the baby, when the baby came out,
Mhm.
and it was just always such a happy floor. People were always so happy on
Right.
that floor. It was very seldom a time where there was sadness or, people weren't happy. So that was a memorable time. And now, even now, what I do now, it's more of a laid back position, but at the same time, that what you do is important because people's lives are on,
Right.
kind of in your hands somewhat.
That's true. I can agree with that. Okay. Now we're gonna talk about relationships. Have you ever been married?
Yes.
Okay. Um, can you tell me about your marriage?
I've been married twice. I'm on my
Okay.
second marriage.
You want to talk about the first one first or the current one?
Well, my first marriage, my first husband and I were married for 2 years. Sorry, not 2 years, 7 years. We
What's
had
his
two
name?
children. What was that?
What's his name?
Reginald.
Okay.
And we were married for 2 years. He's the father of my two children.
Okay. Mhm.
And it was for 7 years.
It was for 7 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you describe that marriage?
In the beginning, it was, pretty standard marriage. We both worked, and after a certain point, it just, got to where we kind of outgrew each other. We were high
Mhm.
school sweethearts. We outgrew each other and kind of decided that it was best to just not be married anymore. At least I decided
Got
because
you.
there was abuse,
Okay. And
physical
when did you guys divorce?
abuse. Let's see. 1992.
1992. All right. And you said you had two kids from that marriage.
Right.
What are their names and birthdays?
Candace.
Mhm.
Um, one January 9,
Mhm.
1983,
Mhm.
and Renika,
Mhm.
January 18th, 1990.
Okay. Can you describe your kids? And what was life like becoming a parent?
Oh, that
Mhm.
was just so wonderful. Oh, the first time I saw my first baby, I was just over the moon. I was super excited. Being a parent has been wonderful. I've always enjoyed being a parent. And then my second child, it was the same thing. I enjoyed being a parent. I they had one. I enjoyed their childhood.
You enjoyed their childhood.
Well, I don't know if they did, but I know I did. I always enjoyed being a parent.
Okay, and do they have
And I
any
still
kids?
do. So what now?
Do they have any kids?
Yes, Candace has 2 children,
Mm-hmm.
and Renika does not have children.
Okay. Um, all right. So you said you were married twice. What about your second marriage? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay. We have been married for 20 plus. We got married in 1997. So this was 24 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good. Marriage is good.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a. We have more of the same personality.
Gotcha. Okay. And what's your husband's name?
Alfonso.
Gotcha. Okay. Have you experienced any life altering events?
I don't. Hmm, I don't know. When you say life altering, do you mean from a mental or emotional standpoint, or in a literal life altering?
Well, from all aspects, mental, emotional, and literally.
Okay, because it's just called life, but
Mm-hmm. Right.
so I don't know that it would be all the things that I would consider life altering, but I know it was very traumatic for me
Mm-hmm.
when both my brothers passed away and when my mom passed away.
Okay.
Um, with my 2 brothers, when they passed away, I wasn't expecting it, and when my second brother passed away, I literally found him deceased.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very life altering for me. Like it was mentally, it was it was very traumatic
Mm-hmm.
mentally.
Right. Okay. Yeah,
And
that's definitely a life altering event.
I've gone through being afraid about it caused me to be fearful of that happening again with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And even when my husband don't answer his phone and he's at home, I just get fearful about things, and I've had to kind of talk myself out of thinking that's going to happen again, but it still kind of rises up sometimes. And it was true. It has been a traumatic year for me because I have a brother that's sick, and he has been really sick this year,
Mm-hmm.
and it has been just really traumatic for me. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm hopeful. I'm prayerful. I have faith, and I believe that he is going to get better. And I just was praying and just trusting that he would.
Gotcha.
That was, those are some things that were I don't know, like if that's considered what you would call life altering or not, but it was for me.
Well, no, it's whatever's life altering for you. No one else can tell
Yeah,
you what was life altering for you.
yeah.
Okay.
When my mom passed away, that was something for me to have to deal with.
Yeah, I'm sure. What was that like? Can you just describe how how you felt in that moment?
Well, the greatest fear that I had ever had in my life from my early childhood that I can remember is always being afraid that my mom was going to die.
Mhm.
So my entire life, I always knew that was my biggest fear. And in the time before she died, it wasn't unexpected. It was expected. And for the last probably year of her life, we spent a lot of time together. And as she was sick, and we spent a lot of time together. Like going to doctor's appointments, her being at my house, me being at her house. It gave me time to say everything I needed to say, to do everything I needed to do, to feel like I wanted her to know I loved her. I wanted her to know that I appreciate her. I would take her hand sometimes and I would put it on my face, or I would just kiss her, and I always told her that I love her because I could see that she was getting sicker. So the last couple of months of her life, I could literally see textbook that she was dying. And even at the very moment that she took her last breath, when I was sitting beside her bed and heard her take her last breath, although I knew she was dying, it didn't make any difference at all because I still felt just totally traumatized.
Mm. Yeah, that I'm sure
I
that was
can
a.
imagine if I had not seen her getting sicker and
Mhm.
knowing that this was happening. I can't imagine just all of a sudden. So I can't imagine what it would have been like, even though I saw it coming. It wasn't any better when she took her last breath because I was sitting right beside her bed when she took her last breath, and that just, I don't know,
Mm. Mm,
that was
okay.
painful.
Yeah, that was another definitely another life altering event. How can you say these events allowed you to grow as a person? Like being that they changed you, each of them changed you in a way, but I'm sure it changed you in a good way as well. So how would you say, each of these events have changed you?
I have always tried to take whatever, well, literally, just like, well, not necessarily literally, but the expression when life gives you lemon, you make lemonade.
Mhm.
My mama used to say, if you fall, don't wallow. I've always tried to make, for example, another life altering event was when I got divorced.
Mhm.
I didn't want to be that divorced person that was oh poor pitiful me.
Mhm.
I didn't want to be that person who lost a family member and it's just oh poor pitiful me. I gotta pull myself up by my bootstraps, do what I got to do, and whatever the struggle is, just look past the moment that I'm in. And this is what I used to always tell my children: look past the moment and see to the other side. So whatever situation you're in, you got to deal with it and you got to move on. You can't stay there and just, mama say, wallow. You can't stay there and wallow. You got to move on.
I think that's a great quote to live by. All right. Look, let's get out of the heavy stuff.
Okay.
Look, let's talk about friendships. Um, how would you describe your friendships? Would you say that you had, I guess, a best friend?
The best friend that I have is somebody that I have, as far back as I can remember, I was 3 years old. We were best friends, and we're
Mhm.
still best friends. And she is the one person that I can honestly say I have remained friends with throughout all my life.
Mhm.
We started the school together. We played together. She lived around the corner from us, so I visited with her a lot as a child. Her mom and my mom were friends. Uh, she is actually absolutely the best person I know.
What's her
And
name?
Brenda.
Brenda. Okay. All
Hmm.
right. Would you say that's pretty much your only friend, or do you have like a good group of friends?
I don't have a big group of friends because I don't trust people.
Mhm.
I don't have the energy for negativity, so I'm
Mhm.
very select at people who I choose for my friends. And when I say choose for my friends, people who I associate enough with to call them my friends.
Right.
I have people that every now and then, like, hey, hey, how you
Mhm.
doing? We may have a good conversation or phone conversation, but I don't have a whole bunch of friends. Like, I don't have 4 or 5 friends,
Okay, gotcha.
and I'm okay with that. I'm very
Okay.
okay with that.
Okay.
I have a couple of friends. My other, all my friends, most of my friends, other than the one that I just told you about, she and I are the same age. But other than that, most of my friends are older. And I
Okay.
have one really good friend who has been a real good confidant. But she, she's my friend too. I consider her a friend.
And what's her name?
Shirley.
Shirley. Okay. And how long have you guys been friends?
Oh goodness, probably about as long as about
You
that age.
and
Probably about 40 years, I guess. I'm
oh,
saying
okay.
40 years. I mean, if I had to guess.
Okay. Okay. And what about your hobbies? What are some things that you like to do now? Like,
Oh wow! Today was a very relaxing day because I got outside in the yard. I
mhm,
pulled some weeds out of my flower bed. Yesterday I got outside. I planted a few flowers. So I really enjoy working and planting flowers
mhm.
and just doing stuff outside that I need to do, like I don't know, just stuff outside. Um, just in the last couple of years, I actually like to watch TV because before then I would watch TV every now and then. But
Mhm.
now, during the pandemic, I kind of like sit around. I watch Netflix. I watch movies on TV. I like to do that. I have a few shows that I like to watch. I like spending time with my family because I always like laughing at my family is funny. So I just I like laughing and talking with my family sometimes, and even when we don't get to talk, just in a group text with my family, my immediate family, like my siblings and my nieces and nephews.
Oh,
And I like going out. I love shopping online or in stores. I love shopping.
okay. All right. I heard you mention the pandemic, and that's what we were gonna get into next. How has historic events such as 9/11, the hurricanes, the recession, any world wars, and now COVID, how has it affected you and your community?
Um, 9/11, I think, impacted every single person because it made people feel like we're all one.
Mhm.
And it made people realize how vulnerable we really are and how anything can happen at any time. I mean, I was at work one day and I heard about, the planes hitting the towers in New York, and it was like, oh, wow. Think about all the people that are on that plane and the people that are working in the building. And it made me sympathetic to those families.
Mhm.
And with all the wars that we have had, as far back as I can remember, I know I can remember a war that started like in, I guess it was in the 90s when I remember a war starting, and then I remember thinking how people had children and husbands and wives that were going to war, and they didn't know if they were going to see them. And I had an all new respect for the military because they really are the people who afford us the rights that we have that we wouldn't even have if it wasn't for the military.
Mhm. Okay.
And as far as the economy, I have pretty much tried to live on the basis of what I have as far as, as far as money.
Mhm.
So fortunately, I have never been in a situation where I've like lost a home or lost vehicles or lost a job other than I was in the factory I was working at closed, but then that's when I went to school. So it was never anything detrimental happening to me because of what was going on in the community. Um, so fortunate for that. And then the other thing as far as the pandemic, what the pandemic has taught me is how to find peace
Mhm.
in the simplest things. And I have always tried that. Well, I've always felt like I was a simple person. I don't know if anybody else would think so, but I think I am. I'm simple. And it has taught me to enjoy the simple things. Like the first few months of the pandemic, my grandchildren were here. Like they would come and stay a week at a time. And that was just the happiest time I can remember because I got a chance to spend a lot of time with them. I got a chance to just do the simplest things with them. We went outside, we looked for bugs, we looked at plants, we did the simplest things, and they enjoyed it, and I did too. So the pandemic, even though as bad as it's been,
Mhm.
it just taught me about us being cautious. It kind of put my whole household on the same page with how important it is to keep things clean and
Mm-hmm.
to keep, hand washing and just, when you're going out in public, just being cautious about your, not getting too close, not touching stuff and, cleaning your hands and just all of that stuff. So I'm grateful for that. And again, I try to see the good part of just life in general because there's so many things that could be so much worse.
Right.